notes. Otherwise, no one's gonna want to see. Did you? I didn't consult you. Did you agree with the titling for today?
I thought it was good. It was
Got the
subtle.
titling.
It will dodge the YouTube algorithm, at
It's
least for
true.
the
It's
immediate
true.
future.
It's well for the immediate future. That's the thing. We'll get away with the live stream, but then
Yeah.
they're gonna hack us off afterwards.
hmm
So I
So
guess
go
that's
to
your clue.
Rumble. Go
Yeah,
to Rumble.
that's your clue. If you're on right now with us and you're on YouTube, you might not be able to watch this either much longer or watch the replay. You want to go over to Rumble and subscribe right now. And hit the big green button. Go from red to green. They're both Christmas colors, but I think green is just inarguably better than red because it represents the tree, and we all love trees, right? I don't know, I'm stretching.
No, I agree, and I think because of that, if we get 10 new email subscribers after this, you and I will duet Christmas carols at the start of the next Unauthorized Caucus.
I feel like it's a little early for that, and then the other side of me says no one wants that at any time of the year.
Yeah, that might scare people away.
Likely.
Okay, we promise not to. If you go to phyllisschlafly.com and sign up for the email list, you'll get all sorts of good goodies in your email, in your inbox. You'll get all of our links, all of our notes from every week. Yeah, it's all around a great time. Not something you want to miss out on. As well, hit that subscribe button, whether you're on Rumble or on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend. Share with a friend, even if you're not watching this live. If you're watching this later today or tomorrow, we would love for more people to see it because, like I said last week, we do this for you. And the more of yous that there are, the more happy that we are.
Right. This is definitely one of the highlights. We were just talking about that before it came on. This is one of the highlights of our week. I hope it's one of the highlights of yours as well. That we get to start some of these fun discussions, and you get to sit in and join us. So, duets, do it. Someone says.
See,
no.
I told you they wanted it.
The people wanted. The people don't know what they want.
The biggest people don't know. The low of my week though is also this exact time because I don't get to watch an Unauthorized Caucus.
That's why there's a wonderful replay that we get to see every time.
But I like to watch it live.
I like to watch it live. Well, that's going to be a problem for you, but that's okay. Red is my favorite color. Hey, the Ed Reporter's on, everybody. The Ed Reporter is on. So, well, let's get into it. There's a few things. There's a few things that have happened this week. I think there's a main issue we want to get into and talk about. But first of all, Congress. The speaker fight is over. I know you and I were both just sitting back, fight the whole time, enjoying the process. Which, of course, I'm simplifying it a little bit here. We actually did think that this was valuable and worthwhile to have this battle between the hardline conservatives, the hardline establishments, but that's over. And Mike Johnson from Louisiana is the new speaker. What do you think? Thumb up, thumb down, 2 thumbs up, 2 thumbs down, half and half? What's your take on that? Just a hot take.
I'll give him 1 thumbs up. I mean, he's not Jim Jordan.
1 thumbs?
Yeah, one thumb. I mean,
you're married to a teacher, right?
It's still a thumbs up.
It's still a thumbs up. Oh, well, okay, fine. I'll give it to you.
It's a contraction. Thumb is up. Thumbs up.
Thumb
up. I don't know. I feel like that's a grammar question.
Stop stretching.
We could talk about later in front of the coffee pot. But yeah, I'll give him 1 thumb. He's not Jim Jordan. I don't think he's going to slash through the deep state in the way that Jim Jordan will, but I do think that he is a principled conservative. He stood by Trump from what I've seen of his record. I think he's going to be a good guy to lead the House. He's going to be a good speaker. So I'm looking forward to what the future entails. And as much as I don't like our Congress doing anything, I prefer that. If they're going to do something, I think we'll do something good with Mike Johnson.
Well, he managed to stop them from doing anything for a few weeks. That was kind of nice. But no, I agree. I think that out of our choices here, maybe is he as good as some of the other hardliners? I mean, is he Tom Massey? No, he's no Tom Massey. But there's only one Tom Massey, and he lives in northern Kentucky. And I kind of wish that he was my congressman so I could vote for him. And Rand Paul at the same time.
Cloning them.
I think that Tom Massey would probably disagree with that, as do I. But that's a whole separate issue. But I think that Mike Johnson is going to be a vastly better leader and stick to conservative principles than a lot of the establishment names that got floated, including Kevin McCarthy, who isn't by any stretch of the imagination the worst person in Congress as far as values and big government go, but he is a swamp creature.
But yes, he's better than McCarthy, as one of our comments is asking. Is he better? Yes, he is.
Yes, but much better than McCarthy. I like Mike Johnson quite a bit. And to your point, wasn't he on Trump's defense team? He was one of the defense team members in the Senate during the trial after impeachment number 1.
Yeah, he was the
2.
co-author of one of the amicus briefs. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure.
Right.
During the Russia hoax.
Of course, since he's now the speaker, people have revived his little video or GIF, whichever one it was, where he has the Trump paper, or he has the newspaper up. It says Trump, Trump exonerated or acquitted, Trump acquitted.
Right.
And then he brings it down and he's standing in front of Nancy Pelosi's sign and he wiggles his eyebrows. He's got a sense of humor. He's a little bit of an outsider. I think that's probably, this is a good compromise. And compromise isn't necessarily a dirty word. So I think that a lot of people are comfortable with him more so than the Jim Jordans of the world. I'm more comfortable with him than I am with the Tom Emmers and Kevin McCarthy's of the world. I think it's a good thing. So anyway, it's going on over here. But anyway, yeah, Kentucky has McDonald too. That's right. Or McConnell. It feels like McDonald. Sometimes it's old McDonald's farm of funnies. But I would still go to Kentucky if I could vote simultaneously for Rand Paul and Tom Massey. You tell me a better combination of votes that you feel good about putting your stamp on every year, and we might sing Christmas carols for you. But anyway, so yeah, that was the speaker's fight finally came to an end. Is there anything else overhanging we should talk about?
I think we should talk about the topic.
We should get into it. All right. Well, let's get into it.
Last night, if you've been looking at the news, there was a mass shooting in the state of Maine. I believe that about 22 people have tragically lost their lives. And of course, as with all mass shootings, the Democrats are going to be quick to weaponize this into a push for new gun control legislation. So we kind of wanted to take the opportunity to respond to the Democrats before they even start obnoxiously utilizing this tragedy and discuss gun control. I mean, I don't think it's a topic we've gotten to discuss together, you and I, on the air before. Gun control, mass shootings, surrounding topics.
And this is where, by the way, we've said all of the key words. If you're on YouTube, you might want to hop over to Rumble and find us, because you never know. YouTube doesn't like it when we talk about guns at all, and we haven't even really ever gotten into it. But those are our videos. They don't seem to like. But but yeah, let's dive in. Well, first of all, this is active and ongoing. So I don't know if we have any listeners or viewers in Maine. But this person of interest already has been moved over to a suspect now who has a warrant out for his arrest, with 8 murder charges so far and climbing. So this is definitely an ongoing situation. And just like everyone else on the air is saying, if you're watching this and you're in Maine and you have information about this Robert Card, call the authorities, because there is an active manhunt that is growing.
He has not been apprehended.
He has not been apprehended. He's still armed and dangerous. So this is ongoing, but his story in particular highlights to me the title of what we titled this video. Let's address the real issues, because to your point, immediately everyone's going to hop down the throat of the gun control debate. That's what the left is going to do. And I mean, we need to have, we can respond to that, and we can talk about the Second Amendment gun control, what it does or doesn't mean. But the reality is that's not the issue here. That's just not at cause of or is not behind this situation, nor most of these situations. It really is a crisis of culture and of mental health and of moral and values in America. And it's all of these different components that need to be talked about, and all of these different things. If you want to find a fix, taking away the tool isn't going to fix broken people. Broken people are broken. Well, why? And then how do we address that? How do we monitor that? So it's just, this is, to the point we always talk about. These are the conversations we're having in the hallway. We had a lively discussion going earlier this morning because this just spiderwebs into all sorts of stuff, none of which has to do with guns almost. I mean, it does to an extent, but it's really so much deeper than that. And that's why we wanted to just go ahead and jump on in. I see you scrolling through something. What do you want to?
So, and I think when people jump onto gun control very quickly whenever there's a mass shooting, and mass shootings are tragic, but what goes on every day is, one-off murders, one person killing another person. And really it's, I forgot who said it, but, laws that pertain only to exceptions make for bad laws. I think Ayn Rand said something pretty similar to that. Or like rules should not be based on exceptions. I guess that's the opposite of what Carl Schmitt would say, but regardless, laws surrounding firearms and any sort of laws dealing with human life and murder and all that should be oriented towards bringing down the total number of murders in a state or a municipality or wherever it is. And So I wanted to look into gun laws in Maine. I'm on everytownresearch.org, and they are clearly a pro-gun control organization because they rank Maine's gun gun laws as abysmally low, 20.5 out of 100, and they go through 50 key policies that a state should have, so that they have like safe firearm laws. But what's interesting is also Maine is below the national average for gun violence deaths per 100,000 residents. So, I mean,
didn't they have like 29 homicides in the entire state for all of 2022?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm stealing your thunder
Well, yes,
here. But I mean, that's just, that is, for some of us that live in places that, a state that has the city of St. Louis or the city of Chicago next door, like that's crazy low. That's almost unbelievable. Yeah. It's like a tiny small town. Like I say, a tiny small town, but I mean that's unbelievably low. So this is really pretty shocking,
right,
to that local community. Which, that's just a reminder to us that this really is going to be pretty devastating and tragic for this area. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So it's just important to remember that you really can't draw any sort of statistical correlations when you're looking at the factors of gun laws on the books and mass shootings, because mass shootings on this scale are so incredibly rare that like a statistical correlation would not show you any sort of useful information. It's better to look at the correlation between gun laws and homicides in general, even though I don't think policies should even be based on that. I think they should be based on the principles in the Second Amendment. But regardless, it is clear that low gun law strength, quote unquote, does not directly correlate in the state of Maine to a high number of homicides. So I was looking through this checklist. I was looking at their gun laws, seeing what could relate to this case in one way or another. And if you read anything about the suspect, he was checked into a mental institution for 2 weeks earlier this year, I believe. And there's very little information about that aside from his relatives saying that he was hearing voices in his head, and that he had made a threat to shoot up an army camp or something like that.
National Guard facility.
Yeah, National Guard facility. Which, but what's important is that it was not clear whether or not he was voluntarily or involuntarily checked into this mental health facility. Because I went through the laws in the state of Maine, not all of them, obviously, but I found the one that would be pertinent in this situation. It is from the Laws of Maine, Title 15, Part 1, Chapter 15, Section 393, subsection, was it C? Yes.
I believe it's C, from memory.
From memory?
Yeah, if memory serves, it's C.
Sounds good. Oh, wait, I don't think that's the one. It might be D.
That's why I said
regardless, it's in here. I was reading it earlier. I can't find it right now. But the Maine does have laws on the books to where you are prohibited from getting a hold of a firearm if you have been involuntarily committed into a mental institution and or have pled insanity in some sort of criminal case. So that's what makes it interesting here. And I think we'll have to find out later as more information comes out if he was involuntarily or voluntarily checked into this mental institution. But even if we put that aside, I feel like as much as gun control is bad in the case that somebody says they want to go shoot people at a National Guard camp, I think that's a pretty clear indication that there should at least be an investigation into this person from that point,
right,
rather than from the point when somebody actually starts hurting people.
So, and this begs now, and we're stepping into the land of conjecture, and we're I'm not necessarily suggesting if someone said, what is your state policy or bill or new legislation you would put forward, I'm not sure that this is necessarily what I would. At this point, I'm floating ideas. I'm asking questions because I want to find out. And again, this is what the program is all about. I want to see, like, let's say stuff out loud. I hate to call this a safe space, but you know what I mean. This is an environment where, like, if we can say something out loud and have the conversation, run it down. Now, hold on. What would that mean? Let's have out this conversation all the way down. Where do we fix some of those loopholes? Like when the state of Maine, this is my question, when the state of Maine, or any state for that matter, has a rule or a law that if you've been involuntarily checked into a mental institution for mental evaluation or whatever it is that they write in the code, how does that get communicated to law enforcement that you can't, this shows up on your background check when you run, to go get a new gun. Or if you have a concealed carry license or something that gives you, this is an obvious, how does that go? Because with HIPAA laws, often that stuff does not get shared. And I mean, we could talk, there's probably two different levels of what can and can't be shared based on HIPAA laws. But then there's also just people that don't work well together, agencies that have, a very awful track record of working well together. And also here we're talking about state and federal level because we call in to an FBI system to do the background check, which actually it's not the FBI anymore. It's the ATF, isn't it?
I'm not sure.
I think the ATF took over directly the NICS, National Instant Criminal Check, Criminal Services. I forget what the S is. The NICS background checks. The state is calling into the federal. Well, if the state agency doesn't know what, state medical people know because of HIPAA laws, how can they even tell? And then how do we close that gap? Because common sense dictates if you've been committed to a mental institution for hearing voices and if you've made active threats with a firearm, we don't have to suspend red flag laws, which we're against. You suspend someone's rights without due process. We have cause here to go through the due process and suspend someone's rights, quite possibly. This is a reasonable thing to at least look at. And this was back in, July that I think he was committed? This is months later. So I'm just curious. I haven't seen anything about how that works out. How would that work out? What do you think? Are we over the line of? I'm asking a lot more questions than I'm offering answers. But this is, as a big Second Amendment guy, this is one of those things. I want to talk about the fact that it's not the gun, it's the state of the person. But then, how do we actually have that happen without violating someone's due process?
Right. Well, just as a quick aside, it was subsection E. I found it. It was just below where I was looking.
Not C, not D, but E.
E. Yes. But I think in the case of an involuntary commitment, that would probably come in some form of court order in which there would be a record of that is accessible to law enforcement and the courts in the state.
That's true. That ought to be.
Right. But if it's a voluntary check-in, I mean, of course, HIPAA would protect that. And I think it would be a gross overreach of government power, not just in terms of gun laws, but in terms of really government power in general to be able to access people's private medical records. So it's if it was a voluntary check-in, it's like there might be nothing that the government could have done in this situation.
Right.
Which, does that mean that we need to ban all guns? No, obviously not.
Right.
That is not the correct answer. But if it was involuntary, if he had made a threat and it was tied to some sort of mental issue, then the police would have a file on that. They would have records of that, and they should have had. I don't know if they did. We're still making conjecture. Not all the information is out yet, but they should have had files on this man made a threat to hurt National Guardsmen, and that's not good, and that should be investigated. So it's a.
And see, this is what now this kind of leads us off into two different paths. Sometimes, and this is just there's two different lines of thought here then to pursue. Sometimes there is just nothing you can do reasonably in a free society with due process, checks and balances, where government is not the all powerful. And even then, it's a perceived we can do something about everything. You can't. You have a correct perspective on the world, in my opinion. The fallen world of sin nature, it's just there's not always anything you can do. Sometimes you can't, but sometimes there's just nothing you can do. That's why we live in a world where we balance, and this is part of the conversation that came up. What is that liberty worth? Is it worth risking my life over? Well, yes. And that's why every day I don't want you to just take away all of the tools that anyone can use. Just let me have them too, because otherwise you're going to take that away. It doesn't make me safer, because now I just have to be afraid of you and everyone else in charge when all of a sudden this, you run this out. We all know how this looks like, tyranny, et cetera, and so on. So there's just a road you don't go down. This is just, I choose to live in dangerous freedom. What's that quote from, is that Jefferson? I forget who, or was it Franklin? Those who would give up essential liberty, for the sake of a little temporary safety, deserve neither liberty or safety. It's been paraphrased 100 times.
That sounds like Jefferson.
I think it's that's the thing. I think that they borrowed from each other. So there's different versions of quotes for different founding fathers, but it all comes back to the same thing. But the reality is this just, drives home. We could look at this situation in Maine over and over and over again, but the images that are coming out, this guy walking into a bowling alley, walking into a bar, this is why people choose to carry modern weapons. This is why people choose to conceal those, choose to be at any moment ready, because we live in a society where this can happen. And if you want to say that, well, the left has indoctrinated a bunch of people, well, we shouldn't fear for our lives like this. Well, you tell me how we fix it without just violating everybody's due process, violating everyone's rights, and just locking everyone in a cell. Then they couldn't hurt each other, but that's it. We're not going to go down that road. So then, well, that kind of begs the question. So we could go down that discussion about being prepared, but how did we get here? Why is this happening? And it's not just that it seems to be happening more frequently. It is happening more frequently. This was not news every other weekend, 45, 50 years ago. It just wasn't. And guns are not easier to get. They're harder to get post the Gun Control Act of 1968. You can't just walk into Sears and Roebuck and buy something anymore. A fully automatic machine gun, an actual machine gun. You can't do that anymore. You have to go through licensing, and you have to, at the bare minimum, you have to have a background check, and it's a high cost to get into it. There are more guns and more gun owners than there've ever been before, but it's not easier to get guns than ever before, and yet these things are happening now. So it's not the access to guns. It's not even the this and the that and the other. It's the people. The people are more broken, and the culture is more broken, it seems like, than ever before. So if we want to ultimately fix this, and if just taking away the tools and cracking down from a government level isn't it, then we need to be talking about the honest to goodness. We could address the mental health issues of people right now, but what's leading our culture to be like this? And that leads me back to a whole discussion about the family. We've lost the family. We've lost religion at the center of society, even if you're not an active participant. The basic tenets of it and the basic morals, like all of those things have shifted and changed drastically in the last 50 years. Here we are.
Well, and I think it's interesting because we are in a very different situation, and you bring up the idea of the possibility of tyranny, and how maybe a way to solve this would be to lock everybody in jail. But it's interesting because the left seems to have been pursuing kind of an anarcho tyranny of this increasing government power, but not doing the things that even really matter. Meanwhile, they're not putting the people in jail who should be in jail, as we see increased zero bail reforms and the doing away with mandatory minimums, and changing up the rules because soft on crime rules, because we need to be compassionate and understanding. They spent a whole year saying defund the police. It's like, you want to defund the police, and then there are mass shootings, and there's the mass shootings that we don't hear about because they happen every day in these big cities, which have terrible laws about these kinds of things, where guns are rampant, not due to a lack of gun control legislation, but due to a lack of accountability on criminals. So it's very bizarre that the left wants to take away the only means we have to defend ourselves in the world that they are creating. There's even people talking about prison abolition. I mean, that's not as many politicians, but you see that in kind of the grassroots of leftism, talking about prison abolition, because keeping people in cages is mean. And that's not very nice. And having a border is mean, because we should let everybody in, and it's mean to say no. And that's what it really comes down to, is just this emotional response of leftists who, or even just some normal people that end up voting Democrat, of this emotional response of like, we don't like it when the government says no, because that's mean. And we don't like it when the government is mean. This makes me think of I don't even know what it's called, but Disney, Pixar, or one of those organizations released a trailer for an upcoming movie, where all I saw was the trailer, but I saw somebody's really good analysis of it, that this encapsulates leftist psychology regarding government, because there's this king that can grant wishes to anybody who asks, and he doesn't grant all the wishes. And then like the protagonist girl of the movie, she's gonna like take over and be the grantor of wishes. But that perfectly encapsulates how the left views government, where it's just an institution of unlimited means that can grant as many wishes as they want, and the only reason that they don't is just because they're mean. And like I think that kind of sums up
it does
the view of government.
Actually, and that's the thing, is your point raises a very interesting part in this. For us as conservatives who are looking across the field of this issue, there are two distinctly different kinds of leftists. There are those in charge and the useful idiots. And those in charge can be split into the people who are actually in charge and the people who think they're in charge, but they're just the middle managers who are being lured along with their own promise of fame and power and glory. But you know, at the bottom level, these people who actually advocate for the abolition, like honestly, they think that abolishing prisons and not having, you know, borders and any kinds of laws, these are the useful idiots that really do honestly think and live in a bubble of understanding that people are naturally good down inside. It's all just their external circumstances that makes them do bad things. So if we can remove all of those, man is perfect. It's a very secular humanist,
it's
Marxist.
Rousseau's idea.
Yeah,
we're noble savages.
It is extremely at its core Marxist, and it just fundamentally doesn't work. Anyone who understands the world knows, yeah, that doesn't work. But there are a lot of people out there who literally don't understand that's just not how it works. They think that it's possible. They are the useful idiots that go along with this stuff. And then there's the whole other class of people who know and or don't care that this won't work. But it doesn't matter, because if I get to take away all of these things, it's not like it's going to make everyone better, but it leaves me in charge. All the people with guns are on my side, protecting me and paid by me, because you don't have them. All of the people who have freedom to make their own decisions and money to do things and this, et cetera, and so on are the ruling class, or me. It's you know, the oligarchy, which, as we know, this is how communism always plays
That's
out.
Exactly what communism
every
has always
single
looked like.
time. It ends up looking like that. The useful idiots who really believe in it, and everyone else who understands, yeah, that's not possible, but this leaves me in charge. So when we're having this conversation with people and we're talking about, you know, the Second Amendment, talking about gun control, talking about tyranny, talking about where things lead to when we strip due process, strip rights, do remember that there are a lot of people out there who mean bad, and there are a lot of people who are just dumb. Like, I don't mean to belittle them. I should say ignorant. They're just ignorant. They literally have no idea that everything they've been fed. And I see the word indoctrination has come through here a couple of times on the chat, which, by the way, the chat's going nuts, and I got a couple of questions I'm going to ask out of it. But they literally don't know any different. They're just completely ignorant. So as we deal with folks, there's a lot of people out there, I think, who we have to deal with differently than the ones who are behind the scenes, understand what's going on, disingenuous politicians who really ought to know and do know that this doesn't actually make a change, but this leaves me in charge. There's two different ways to treat people here as we go into these discussions and arguments: the ones who don't know any better and the ones who do. So there's an education and a fight, you know, your bad ideas. And I think that's a good thing to keep in mind, is that there are honestly just a lot of people who truly, deer in the headlights, have no idea about how these things work out, and if it does or doesn't work. It's really pretty incredible. But I'm going to catch up on the chat over here for a sec. Someone's asking, by the way, where did it go? Someone is asking, this is kind of on topic, but are threats protected under freedom of speech? That's actually an interesting discussion, and we can get into freedom of speech. What your offhand comment to that, or your first reaction?
Yeah, my first reaction is no. No, I don't think so. I mean, because your speech actually means something. It's not simply words. So if you're expressing intent to harm somebody or to take something, I don't think that's, I mean, it's like, sure, you're free to say that, but it's like, okay, well, you've also, I don't think we should prosecute them for what they're saying, but for what they're intending to do. You know, you're making a plan to cause harm to other people. And so it's not as much a prosecution of the speech proper, just of, you know, people who say they're going to do bad things. We should take them at their word.
That's what I was going to say at this. And I mean, I'm sure this is related to the first question we were talking about, the threats he had made against the National Guard facility or whatever it was. There, credible. I mean, you hear the phrase credible threat. There is definitely that's the line. I would tend to say it depends. I mean, it depends on what kind of threat we're talking about here. Like, if someone just, you know, oh, one of these days I'm going to punch you in the mouth. Like, if two guys are mouthing off at each other at the bar, is this a threat that gets prosecuted? Or if someone calls in with a credible threat of, you know, a violent threat to someone, or something happens. The legal system steps in, law enforcement steps in if it's a credible threat. This is, I would tend to say, the line where your free speech ends. You know, you can say all kinds of crazy stuff, offensive things, you know, angry things, but that line of threat is where the line is, where it typically goes, okay, freedom of speech doesn't cover that anymore. Like, you have consequences now.
And that's why police investigate those things too, because the line is not crystal clear. I mean, somebody could say something, but that's why the police investigate it. Like, oh, hey, you said you were going to hurt somebody. Uh-oh, is our video gone out?
I don't think so. Go ahead, keep going.
All right, that's why the police have to investigate threats, because it's not instantly you're in court once you make a threat, but it's like, okay,
Right.
is this a credible threat? Does this person have the means to cause harm? Does it seem like they've actually been conspiring to do this? That's why, and that's why, if there is credible suspicion, you can detain somebody or even procure a warrant to
Right.
search somebody's house.
And that's what someone's pointing out, the proverbial yelling of fire in the movie theater. You can't, intent is the key.
Right. Right. So if the police search their house legally with a warrant or under reasonable suspicion that's protected through constitutional means, and they find, oh, this person says they were going to hurt these people, and we found that they had 4 firearms and like 10,000 rounds of ammunition. Okay, well, we think that they're probably planning to do this, and like, oh, they have a map, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's really my answer to that. It's it matters if it's actually a threat. If it's a credible threat, then no, that's not protected under free speech.
Yeah, I agree. The camera is blipping here, and I don't know why, but I think our audio continues, and I see it still going up there. Let me see here. We got YouTube. YouTube is going crazy too. Same tools. Let's try to use CCA. Yeah. Here's again. So here's a question. So how do we educate more and more ignorant followers? The media? That's a good question. I mean, I think we could probably go through how we fight the tyrannical, people who want to be in charge. And I think most of us know that. But truly, how do we educate people on this? First of all, well, when educating people who are ignorant about this, when it comes to violence on a large scale and the use of whatever tool it is, I think that there's 2 fronts. I think that desensitizing people to the tools, to understand that this thing that you don't understand, because we have more and more city people that have gone to more and more college than ever before in generations prior, that are more and more now completely unfamiliar with guns and hunting and anything that used to be normal, and it is unknown and now scary. So it's really easy to convince this ignorant person that this is a scary thing that caused the bad man, who's not actually a bad man, to do a bad thing. So the bad thing made someone do something wrong.
Right.
And it's like, well, if you understand, it's not gonna, it's kind of, we joke about it now, like, yeah, I've been waiting for my gun to get up and go shoot someone, but it hasn't. It's because the gun doesn't do anything.
Right.
When people, I think, are desensitized in the right kind of way to these things, that they don't know about, when they're exposed to them, I think that's a huge factor that helps and realizes, it's not just crazy people who are looking to hurt someone who get these. These have a purpose. They're fun.
Right.
It's got sporting purpose. It's got hunting purpose. It has self-defense purpose. It's the mindset. Why would someone want to hurt these other people? Then you have the option, like, we've got to talk about absolute truth and morality, which is missing from our culture, just like an experience with guns or something else. Those things are missing quite a bit, and we have to tell people, hey, this is just how it works. We don't get to make up truth. It's either right or it's wrong. You have that gut feeling, that's because it's right or it's wrong. I mean, that's just my initial forays. There's 2 different: desensitizing and going into the what do you think? Someone asking, how do we educate the ignorant?
Right. And well, I think it's also, there's just a very large difference in the way that human nature is viewed, because there's really the blank slate view, kind of the Rousseau view, that man is inherently good and is made bad by his environment. And that's also kind of the view of environment can change people. That's the view of like the behavioralists and the people that have been kind of dominating since the 60s and such. The social engineers, people who describe themselves as social engineers, like the Tavistock Institute or the New School, organizations like this, that it's like, we can form society towards our own ends, because they view man as a blank slate that is infinitely malleable. Whereas if you have any sort of understanding of the Western tradition, or Western philosophy, or the Christian tradition going back through the centuries, you understand that there is a human nature that is a certain way, and that human nature, yes, it's impacted by the events throughout your life and the environment you're in, et cetera, et cetera. But there are things that there is nature first and foremost, that must guide our actions, that we must live in accordance with, and that cannot be escaped, no matter how hard and fast the progressives try to run away with it. But in addition, part of nature is just genes. Like, people are different; they're influenced by their parents, and I think Steven Pinker has, even though he's very much so kind of one of these like wishy-washy psychologists that's just like, oh, humanity is this and the world is so good, etc. He has a really, really good book called The Blank Slate, in which he just goes through all the research and explains man is not a blank slate and Rousseau was wrong. Human beings have a nature, and different human beings have inherent tendencies within them that can be affected or disaffected by their environment. But I think that's why liberals focus so much around gun control, because man is inherently good, and it's his environment that makes him bad. And if his environment has a lot of guns in it, then he's going to shoot people with them. You know, that's just the assumption, and that makes a lot of sense if you're coming from the starting point of man is a blank slate created by his environment.
And to the point, I mean, and to your point, and then someone in the chat, actually, Ed Reporter threw in reminding, hey, the people we're talking about are being brainwashed in college. It's true. And what they're being brainwashed by is, to the point that you're making, and we should wrap this up because I think our camera is probably going on and off, and I hate to annoy people here. We'll have to address that another week. But the people who are being brainwashed are many, and the brainwashing is very complete and is going to be a process to undo. And who is brainwashing them, or what they're being brainwashed with, is, to your point, Marxism, which as its religious and theological base has secular humanism, which is a denial of God, the supremacy of man and man-made morals and everything else. So how do we fix that? I mean, ultimately, we're talking about how to address people and philosophies and history and political. But the reality is, to get people back to a correct understanding of absolute truth and sin nature, they need to understand sin, and that we are sinners, and that there is only one whoever has not sinned and defeated sin and offers us the understanding and the real liberty that we find. There has to be a revival of the church, and there has to be a revival across America, or Americans aren't going to get this en masse. Like, we can have political conversations and cultural conversations and Second Amendment conversations, but that only goes so far. The reality is, we are dealing with generations now of brainwashed people. And it's not just that they're brainwashed in favor of gun control and this political and that political. They are brainwashed by a system of morality that is upside down. And we have got to address that, or all we're doing is kind of putting Band-Aids on the situation and maybe making some correct choices and turns. But ultimately, the decay of society, the decay of our culture is still there, because the morality is decayed. So the family stays decayed. So, individuals stay. It's a chain reaction that we've got to understand. That's the very heart of it. That's where we have to go back to for a real fix. All the rest of these are temporary fixes. That is the permanent fix. But that is not easy.
Exactly.
I mean, I can't speak a third great awakening into being.
If it was easy, then we would be in charge.
Exactly.
Because you and I would have all the answers. Well, we should probably.
Well, if they put us in charge, it would be easy.
This is true.
No, I'm kidding. It wouldn't actually.
Well, we should probably let our viewers go due to the camera issues. But thank you so much for joining us this week. We're sorry about the choppiness of the video.
Hopefully, just the video. The audio came through is my hope. But I know there's a lot of good stuff going on.
And we haven't lost everybody. If the audio wasn't coming through, I'm sure.
Oh, the people are still typing to us, so they can obviously hear us.
Right.
But it's dinging here, telling us something is wrong with the camera. I don't know why. But thank you for joining us this week. This is just like every week. It seems like the very beginning of a conversation, but this is something that's in the news, and this is something that it just permeates throughout all kinds of things that we talk about, and it goes down a lot of different roads. So it's worth drawing those connections, putting them together. And maybe we'll explore some more of these if we do that in the future weeks, go down in depth. In the meantime, join us in praying for the people of Lewiston, Maine, and then also praying that this evil person would be apprehended and stopped by law enforcement, and that justice would be served very swiftly and very quickly as a matter of closure for some of these families. So it really is a tragic and devastating situation, but it is indicative of a root problem across our entire nation that is all of our responsibilities to address. Those of us who know the truth ought to speak it.
So true. So true. And that's what we're here to do every week.
Caucus together.
12 p.m. Central
truth.
on Thursdays, Unauthorized Caucus.
There you go. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for being here. Go to phyllisschlafly.com and sign up for the email list, and you will get the email with some resources and links after this and notifications for all of our videos in the future. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you next week.